Inequality and poverty. Income and wealth are not equally distributed in a market economy. An individual's income is the amount of money they receive over a set period of time, for example, per week or per year. Income can come from many sources, from wages, interest on bank accounts, from dividends on shares, or from rent on properties. Wealth, in contrast, is the value in money of assets held. Assets can include property, land, money, and shares. Factors that affect a distribution of income. So first of all, people earn different wages. Certain skills are more in demand than others, so workers with those skills are likely to receive higher wages. Second, unwaged people, that is, unemployed or pensioners, often rely on state benefits, so their incomes tend to be lower. Tax and state benefits. In the UK, there's a progressive tax system. Those with higher incomes are taxed a higher percentage of their earnings over certain levels. Some of this tax is then redistributed as benefits to the unemployed or to those with disabilities. Compared to the private sector, workers in the public sector, that is on average, earn more per week. So you're better off being in the public sector. Average full-time earnings also differ considerably from different regions. The highest are in London and the South East. In 2013, the North East and Northern Ireland were the two lowest paid regions. Wealth is more unevenly distributed than income. Wealth often earns income. For example, shares may increase in value and generate more income. Those who earn income from their wealth could invest that income again, for example, by buying more shares, which in turn will generate more income and so on. This means the wealthy become even wealthier, whereas those with low wealth don't have much, if anything, to invest, so their wealth will only grow by a small amount, if at all. Assets tend to increase in value more quickly than income rises. So, for instance, from my own point of view, there was a number of years, about 3 or 4 years ago, 2019, so yeah, maybe about 2015 or so, there was a 2 or 3 year period where my property was earning more a year than what I was earning in wages. So it does happen. Assets do tend to increase in value more quickly than incomes rise. Another example would be more broadly with housing. Housing is increased at a quicker rate than what people's incomes have risen by. Finally, in the UK, income is taxed, but wealth isn't. So it's much easier to redistribute income than wealth. Lorentz curves show the extent of inequality. So the Lorentz curve can be used to represent the distribution of income graphically. Along the horizontal axis is the cumulative percentage of the population, and on the vertical axis is the cumulative percentage of income. The diagonal line at 45 degrees represents complete equality. For instance, 10% of the population have 10% of the income, 20% of the population have 20% of the income, and so forth. The further the Lorentz curve is away from the line of equality, the diagonal line, the greater the inequality in the country. In this graph, the lowest earning 50% of the population only earn 8% of the country's total income. So the highest earning 50% earn 92% of the income. This represents a large amount of income inequality. The Gini coefficients also describe the extent of inequality. So you can see the formula there for the Gini coefficient. So the Gini coefficient is a measure of inequality, and it can be found from the Lorenz curve. The coefficient, as I've said, the formula is there. It's area bit A divided by the sum of area A and B. So just a reminder, there's area A and B above. So what does it mean? Well, a coefficient of 0 represents complete equality, i.e. everybody earns the same. A coefficient of 1 represents complete inequality. In other words, one person earns all the income in the country. Wealth and income inequality have become greater in many countries, including the UK, since the early 1980s, with the highest incomes growing particularly quickly. So, for instance, the UK, the income Gini coefficient has risen from around 0.27 in 1979 to 0.33 in 2013. So we have become a less equal society. Equity and equality are different. Equality means that everyone is treated completely equally. They all get exactly the same things. Equity is more about fairness. People have different circumstances, so it's more about people getting what they need. Equality is positive. It's objective and deals with facts, whereas equity is normative. That is, it's subjective and based on opinion. There are two types of equity. Horizontal equity, this is where people with the same circumstances are treated fairly, i.e. they're treated the same. And vertical equity, people with different circumstances are treated fairly but differently. So let's give you a couple of examples. People with the same level of income are taxed the same amount. This is horizontal equity. People with higher incomes are taxed more. This is vertical equity. The distribution of income and wealth has big impacts on the economy, both positive and negative. The positives regarding impacts of inequality. So first, inequality provides incentives for people to work harder and earn more. So rewarding hard work increases productivity. Second, it encourages enterprise by those who have the funds available to start businesses. Third, it also encourages people to work instead of claiming benefits. Finally, it may create a trickle-down effect. Some economists argue that if there's inequality and greater economic growth, the rich will become even richer and spend more on goods and services, providing more income for the poor. This is known as the trickle-down effect. As a result, relative poverty may increase, but absolute poverty, will decrease. The negative impacts of inequality. Absolute and relative poverty can remain high. It restricts economic growth and wastes people's talent because the poorest people won't have the funds to start businesses. As incomes rise even higher, people generally spend more on imports, so this money would leave the circular flow. Finally, crime is likely to increase because people don't have what they need. It's worth noting a perfectly equal distribution of wealth and income could also be seen as inequitable. For example, it wouldn't reward people who chose to work or took risks to start a new business. A very key evaluative point. So it doesn't come under the positives or negatives, but is worth mentioning in an essay. So there's big differences in income and wealth. So these big differences, in income and wealth often mean there is poverty. And there's two types of poverty, as you know, relative poverty and absolute poverty. So relative poverty is when somebody has a low income relative to other incomes in their country. For example, people whose income is less than 50% of the average income might be classified as living in relative poverty. So someone from a rich country might be classed as living in relative poverty, even though someone in a much poorer country with the same income might be considered wealthy. Absolute poverty is when someone can't afford the very basics, for example, food and shelter. The minimum income needed for those basics is called the poverty line. For example, the World Bank uses a poverty line income of $2 per day. There are many causes of poverty. Unemployment, even in a country where the state gives unemployment benefits, the unemployed are likely to be at the bottom level of income in that country. Low wages. Workers most likely to receive low wages are those with few skills or qualifications. State benefits rising more slowly than wages. This means the relative income of people relying on state benefits fall over time. And this leads us to the poverty trap. The poverty trap can affect people who are in poverty. These may be people relying on state benefits or those on low wages and means-tested benefits. These are just benefits based on a person's income. When these people earn higher wages, they may only actually receive a small percentage of that wage increase, as strange as that sounds. This is because they'll need to pay more income tax and national insurance contributions and have their benefits reduced because they're now earning more money. In some cases, this could even cause a drop in their disposable income, and this means the marginal tax rate will be high. So the combination of income tax, national insurance and the benefit system can result in a disincentive for these people to find work or to increase the number of hours they work. It's up to the government to attempt to remove these disincentives through supply-side policies.